All right, I'm Mike Moranto here for DaemenWildcats.com and happy to be joined by alumna Samantha Engel, alum of our women's soccer program, as well as our psychology department here on campus, 2014 graduate, living down in Atlanta now. So, Sam, thanks for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Going to jump right in here, Sam. You one of the most accomplished players in the history of our women's soccer program. Many accolades, all conference multiple times, USCA All-American, USCA All-Academic, all-time leader in career assists, one of three players to go over 100 points in a career. And your individual success played into some really great team success as well. Which we'll get into. I want to start with you individually. What was the experience like for you and being so successful within our women's soccer program?
I mean, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's something you can always look back on and reflect on. There's always, oh, I wish I could have done that. But, looking back, it was pretty successful. I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of opportunities because of it. And, it was quite the experience, and it taught me a lot about being able to manage my time and be a student athlete, not just an athlete and not just a student. So because of it, I'm where I am now today.
So you come in, Sam, 2010 was your freshman year. I want to ask you about Coach Dolan, Dan Dolan. He's the longest tenured coach on our staff at the moment. So he's been here since 2009. So you were like a member of like basically his first recruiting class. Tell me about the process that you went through recruiting, and what it was like. What did you kind of see in the program at that point with a relatively young head coach to be able to be comfortable committing here?
Yeah, so I have to give a lot of credit to Rob Jackman. He, at the time, was my ODP coach. And so he, knows Coach Dolan and has for many, many years. And he approached me at one of our training sessions like, hey, I have this coach. He's pretty new at Daemen, looking for, some good athletes, and I think you'd be a good fit for him. So he kind of made that introduction, and from there we were able to get Coach Dolan at a couple of my games and tournaments and things along those lines for both high school and club. Since I'm from upstate New York, we made a couple trips up to Buffalo, so it made it a little bit easier. But then I was able to have a overnight with the team and kind of see what it was like. And I really have to say that Jess Brand and Lindsay Miller both really sold it to me. At the time they were both sophomores when I visited, and just staying with them, practicing with the team, really seeing what it was all about was just so exciting. And that was a huge part of me committing to Daemen. And then after talking with Coach Dolan and seeing the goals that he had for this program and how he wanted to get there was just really exciting. So I couldn't pass up that opportunity.
Well, you come in, you make a huge splash right away as a freshman. You led the American Mid-East Conference in assists with 14. Really keyed the an 11-win season. And you mentioned Lindsay Miller. You played with some really great players. Janelle Masi being one of them. Lindsay, you mentioned. I want to ask you about the 2011 team, your sophomore year. You guys go 15-4, arguably the best team in program history. What made that team so special and so good?
The leadership of our senior class. They really brought it every day. They led by example. They weren't afraid to say the difficult things when it needed to happen. And, they didn't just expect anything. They brought you along to get to that point. And they really took everyone under their wings and went for it. And that was a huge part of our success, was how much they influenced the rest of our team.
How much did that impact you then? You're a sophomore that year. You end up being the team captain, your junior and senior seasons. How much did that impact you to be around leaders like that and then apply those lessons in later years?
Oh, it was huge. It was so huge to be able to see how Lindsay carried herself, her composure, just being able to lead by example and be able to walk the walk, talk the talk. Like it was just so great to learn from her. And again, the rest of the senior class, like that class was so like as a whole, really was able to demonstrate different ways of being a leader. And, you were able to learn something different from each one of those people. So that was a huge part in me, being able to get to that point, to be a captain and learning from them and being able to use that in the future.
Now, you individually, I mentioned the assist total your freshman year. As a sophomore, you found the back of the net a little bit more often. I think you scored 15 goals that year, Sam. And I want to ask you about two in particular. You score game-winning goals in overtime, both 4-3 games, so kind of a shootout by soccer standards, like 17 days apart. Tell me about the jubilation that you feel doing that once, let alone twice in less than 3 weeks.
It was incredible. I mean, I believe one of them was against Roberts Wesleyan, and I just remember the ball coming out to me. I was, I believe, outside the 18, and I just ripped a shot, and it went in, and we won. It was very exciting, and it was to look back and see that I had that confidence to be able to take that shot, especially as a sophomore with such a successful senior class that was also there. It was really nice to have that and be able to, contribute and make an impact during that season.
Now, let's fast forward then to 2012. So going into your junior year, basically like an independent type season for us. We had left the NAI at that point. We were not in a conference. We joined the USCAA, which is the United States Collegiate Athletic Association. It's a kind of a national organization that's built for smaller type schools. Started our NCAA transition, but we weren't yet eligible for that kind of postseason. So give you guys something to play for. You guys end up winning a USCA national championship. You beat Maine Fort Kent 1-0 in the final. Tell me about that experience.
It was incredible. Again, you can't just not look back at it and be like, wow, like we did that. And that year it was tough. I mean, really early on, we established a rivalry with Maine Fort Kent, because we knew they were going to be our toughest competitors when we got to that point, and especially if we were playing in the USCAA. So it was really important to us to take those games extremely serious and be able to go after it. So, it was quite the journey. It was quite the experience, to be away for a week and having to balance your schoolwork on top of being able to play every day. And, there wasn't a lot of rest because it was pretty back to back, and being able to get through the tournament style. And, it was important for us too, not to just look towards the final. We had to take it one game at a time. We knew Maine Fort Kent was on the other side of the bracket, and even though that was the case and we planned to see them in the final, we couldn't just assume that we were going to make it. We had to play every game as hard as possible because there were still other good teams that had made it just as much. So it was really important. Took it one game at a time. And then Kim Overmeyer, and in that final, without her, who knows who would have scored that game-winning goal, but she made it happen, and we were able to win that year.
So then going into your senior year, Sam, it's our first year as a member of the East Coast Conference, so we're progressing now through the Division II transition, and I think what maybe some people don't really like the level of competition between the NAI and NCAA Division II. I've always said is very close. But it's a transition nonetheless, especially going into a league like the ECC, which is, traditionally been one of the better leagues in the country, Division II, for women's soccer. A lot of nationally ranked programs, especially at that time. So the conference season doesn't quite go, as successful as it had been the previous couple of years. But you still had the USCAAs to play for. You guys end up with a 10-10 record. You do end up, Maine Fort Kent kind of flipped the script on you in the national championship game that time. But I want to ask you about that, that transition and being a part of that. What was that like?
It was definitely tough. I'm not going to lie or sugarcoat it in any way. We had a year with 2 years of varying competition. You've got your non-league games that, it's whoever you can get a hold of that year that's willing to play you when you don't count for anything. So, some games were blowouts for us where we just destroyed a team, unfortunately. So it was tough to then have to transition into a conference play with very strong conference and be able to have that difference in level of playing, the speed, the aggression, everything changes when you're transitioning. And I definitely agree. I think the NAIA competition was pretty equivalent to the NCAA, but at that time we just weren't quite ready for it, just because it was such polar opposites of what we were going through. Look at Roberts. They also came into the ECC and they were also with us in the NAIA. So, it's definitely similar for sure. And that year we just really had to take every game as it came and, try to put all we could out there and see what we could do.
Now, I wonder, it was definitely a process for our program to get to a point within the ECC and Division II as a whole to kind of turn the corner. And I'm wondering, do you feel like any sense of pride knowing that you were kind of part of the team that laid the foundation when you fast forward now 6, 7, 8 years and our program, has qualified for the ECC tournament and obviously last year went to the NCAA tournament for the first time?
Oh, definitely. I think there's always going to be a sense of pride, especially seeing how far the team has come and knowing what that transition was like and how Coach Dolan has been able to build on that from year to year. It's not an easy transition. It takes time. And, it's about getting the establishment that you can get those stronger recruits in and be able to compete against a tougher team. So that's everything from, a more rigorous strength training program to more conditioning to everything along those lines to be able to compete with the conference. So, just to know, especially with Daemen and how much they've expanded, we didn't have, it used to be the YMCA across the street, and we didn't have that kind of facility or, additional stuff like that at the time. So for those girls to have those opportunity to be able to have those programs and really go for it is awesome. And, I couldn't be prouder that this program is continuing to see success and be able to grow on it each year.
Want to jump to post soccer, right? You leave here 2014 with a bachelor's degree in psychology. You've picked up a master's degree from Barry University down in Miami, and you're studying right now for a doctorate in health science from AT Still University, right? Tell me about being a lifelong learner in this kind of how you've taken your psychology background from here at Daemen and applied that into your professional life.
So I am actually in research now. So without Daemen, I wouldn't be the researcher that I am. Our psychology program, huge shout out to them because of the rigorous writing and, intensive requirements that we had. And because of that, I'm able to do what I need to in my job. We wrote a thesis in undergrad. I wrote a thesis in my master's program. So without those two things, I wouldn't be able or have that highly of an interest in research. And just being a student athlete as well, you learn to manage your time. you mentioned I'm in a doctorate program now. I'm working full time and working towards my doctorate program. Without being a student athlete, I don't know if I would be able to do both. It's managing your time, paying attention to deadlines, and maintaining what you have to do at your actual job. It's the same thing. It's the same principle as being a student athlete. So luckily, between all of that, like I've really been able to continue my education, and I appreciate that Daemen is a liberal arts, because I was able to have opportunities to try different electives. If you ask me, I don't know, sometime at my time at Daemen, oh yeah, you're gonna, do you think you'll get a doctorate in health science? I would have been like, you crazy. Like, I'm going the clinical psych route, things like that. But, that's the way life goes and things change. And I remember having a health promotion class, and I learned so much from that class that I apply it now. I have been in research for the last 3 years, and it's all on health outcomes. And a big part of that is health promotion. So having those opportunities to learn from different areas, even though it's not in my major, was huge.
And you've made a couple of stops along the way, been kind of up and down the East Coast. I mentioned the grad school in Miami. You've spent time in Charlotte, spent time in the Washington, D.C. area, now kind of settled there in Atlanta. And a lot of the research that you're doing now, correct me if I'm wrong, is based around spinal cord injuries.
Yep.
So what is that like? It's such a, it's such a devastating thing to happen to people, whether it happens on a football field or in a car accident. Tell me about that, what you're doing with spinal cord injuries.
Yeah, so I am on a study that is one of the longest longitudinal studies that there is, that is grant funded. So we collect data from people with traumatic spinal cord injuries. So like you said, a motor vehicle accident, a football injury, it can happen at any point. So we collect data from people at the time of their injury, 1 year post, and then every 5 years after that. So we have data from people 35 years ago that had their injury, and we're looking at their long-term health outcomes to see, where they are now, what's changed, what's improving, what are they struggling with, so that we can continue to further that research to improve their lives and have, new methods and new technology available for them in the future. Because it happens, and we have to be able to help that group in the disability community.
Last question for you, Sam, is I know in one of your previous stops, you spent some time assisting the women's soccer program at Queen's University of Charlotte, which is a fellow NCAA Division II member of ours. How do you stay involved in soccer even now?
So I play co-ed adult league. So being new to the Atlanta area, I've only been here 4.5, 5 months at this point. Especially during COVID, it was tough to be able to find a team. But anywhere that I've lived, I've always been able to find a team and continue to play. I most recently found a women's team in a pretty strong women's league. The women down here are pretty, am I allowed to swear? Kick ass. I haven't, it's nice, like, to be able to have that kind of, I don't want to say sisterhood, but, opportunity for friends in a different way than your coworkers, or, a lot of people are former student athletes as well. So they understand what you did, what you went through, and you can instantly kind of bond with that anyway. So I try to stay involved by, playing in the different leagues. And, I'm hoping once Special Olympics activities kick off again, I'll be able to be either on a unified team or coaching with a unified team, because I used to work for Special Olympics and I love what they do, and I want to be able to continue that in Georgia as well. So, just finding ways to stay connected, but mainly adult leagues.
Gotcha. Well, Sam, I want to thank you again for taking the time to do this with me today. My travels in the past have brought me down to Atlanta from time to time. Haven't been there in quite a number of years, but next time I do, I'm definitely going to look you up. We'll get together for lunch. Hopefully obviously post-COVID and everything, and when we can get back to some kind of sense of normalcy. But thanks again for doing this, Sam. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, no problem.